In a letter dated November of 1920, the Hispanic Society writes to Ada Johnson, offering her a position at the Hispanic Society's library. It appears she did not overthink the matter because 1 month later, after leaving her position at the renowned New York Public Library, she becomes fully settled at the Society. Born in Canada, yet becoming a nationalized American, Ada Marshall Johnson studied art and graduated in 1914 from the Canadian University of Acadia. That same year, she began graduate studies at Simmons College in Boston. In her professional career at the Hispanic Society, she began as a cataloger, and from there moved on to assistant bibliographer and library researcher, until 1924, when she was promoted to curator of membership records, in which she managed the Department of Documentation. Her career soon took a brand new direction when in 1927 she was named curator of the museum department. Johnson accepted the position with great enthusiasm, and from that moment on, she was to care for and study both gold and silver metalwork as well as the museum's jewelry collection. Johnson traveled to Europe on multiple occasions. These expeditions were trips that, like those made by her colleagues, allowed her to benefit in a number of ways. These voyages were meant for researching and for acquiring books, photographs, and materials they deemed necessary for the institution. The general routine was that the travelers would receive a series of thematically guided subject outlines, which would determine the types of materials that they were to acquire, both for the library and as research materials during their trip. The importance of these visits cannot be overestimated, as they fostered the scholarly development of these women curators. The letters they wrote during this period and afterwards describe their work and research over the long course, their visits to museums and archives, and interviews with scholars and specialists, some of which were themselves members of the society who lived abroad. These expeditions also enabled the women to establish relationships with people from the culture and society of the places they visited. On one occasion, during Johnson's visit to the Iberian American Exposition, she delivered a set of photographs from the Hispanic Society to the exhibition curator, Don José Cruz Conde Fustegueras. On a separate occasion, while she traveled through Europe in 1929, she met in Brussels with Francisco García Lorca, brother of the famous Malagan poet, Federico García Lorca, and discussed translating and publishing the poet's works. Of her experiences while traveling, Johnson wrote, quote, "Visiting of museums throughout the country has given me, I feel, a period of opportunity and enjoyment, and to have seen the Spanish art objects in various collections in close succession has made the survey especially helpful." End quote. While Johnson's research focused on the objects within the Hispanic Society's collection, this in no way indicates a limit to her learning. Taking into account the methodology Huntington designed for the women curators, Johnson's work stands out in the area of the collection that she was assigned to, and more so, her work and findings in most cases continue to be accepted and respected by other scholars who specialize in these areas of research. Another woman to join the first team of librarians at the Hispanic Society was Anna Pursche, who arrived at the institution towards the end of 1910 and began to work at the library in January of 1911. Over the years, her role at the Hispanic Society took on various positions within this department, although her principal role was that of a cataloger. In 1923, she was named curator of the library. That same year, she embarked on a traveling expedition with her colleagues Ruth Anderson and Catherine Allen. Numerous expeditions took place that year. The main difference about this voyage was that they traveled with 2 chaperones, or lady companions, one of which was Catherine's mother. The general routine was that Hispanic Society employees would travel in groups of 2, with the maximum group size being 4, and there was never any condition of having to be accompanied by chaperones or a male figure. Like her colleagues, Pursche recognized the educational benefits of these trips, but they were also viewed as an adventure. Most of these young women employees did not come from wealthy families, and in the majority of cases, before arriving at the Hispanic Society, did not have the economic means for international travel. Pursche's expedition in 1923 began in March, and her itinerary would take them across the entire peninsula from south to north, arriving in France in July, and from there to London, from where they would make the return trip to New York. Ruth Anderson, considered the official Hispanic Society photographer during that period, took her first snapshots for the museum during that trip. Photographs taken by Anderson, along with those that were purchased during the trip, amounted to 700. These images would form part of the already impressive photographic archive of the institution. Like the rest of her colleagues, this first trip allowed Pursche to acquire new knowledge that had not yet been documented in books. These trips became a sort of baptism by fire and emulated the previous expeditions that Huntington himself had made in the peninsula. They were similar in both the itinerary which Huntington had provided, as well as in the expected outcome of the journey. The most important objective was to make direct contact with the culture and the art, and to observe the daily life and customs of the people that had either produced or served as inspiration for the material that was being preserved and studied at the Hispanic Society. Through her letters and postcards, we can glean the explorer's enthusiasm expressed by Pursche at the beginning of her travels. Quote, "Arrived at Gibraltar this a.m. after a most thrilling ocean trip. Floods, shipwrecks, dances, etc. entered into our lives aboard the President Wilson. Saw the destruction of the SS Julia of the Kosselinch, since our brave crew did wonderful rescue work." End quote. Pursche continued to work at the library for the remainder of her life. She received the Mitre Medal in 1952 in recognition of her many contributions to the Hispanic Society. We hope you enjoyed learning about these two figures who left their mark at the Hispanic Society. Thank you so much for watching.